So this month's worship theme is thresholds, as you probably have guessed and heard. In our case, that's the places we find ourselves when we're caught between what has passed and what is becoming in our lives, then and soon to be. Threshold moments can feel a bit like hanging sort of mid-air. We've let go of one reality, and we're waiting for the new reality to manifest itself. I love Robert Frost's poem. I imagine many of you do as well. And it recalls a threshold decision that he once made, a reflection on the impact of that choice that has made all the difference. And while all of us, I believe, can relate to the experience of finding ourselves at a crossroads where we must choose and move forward, in my experience with Unitarian Universalists, well, that leads me to believe that we often have a special affinity for opting with the road less traveled. Most of us, for example, have come out of some other religious tradition. If we'd stayed on the trodden path, we'd still be in our mainline Protestant churches or attending Catholic Mass, speaking in tongues, going to the synagogue, maybe going to brunch with friends on a Sunday morning. Sometimes, since I've become a minister, I have to admit there have been mornings when I've gone, I miss a good brunch. So I'd ask you for a moment to think back about the times that you identify in your life as being threshold moments and times when you were faced with a choice. One that ended in a fairly typical place, perhaps, and one that ended you in a place that was unknown and untried. These choice moments certainly can embrace both the dramatic and the mundane. After all, each day we make hundreds of choices about how we will spend our time, invest our energy, and where we will focus our attention. It is usually, however, the dramatic choices that we have made that stay with us as memories for a long time. I mean, do you remember the breakfast you had on the morning you turned 16? I don't remember mine. Probably Captain Crunch, that was my favorite at the time. But you may not remember the breakfast, but I bet you remember if you went to the DMV and got your driver's license that day. That was a big one. I bet you remember whether you had a big party or you had a quiet celebration. I bet you probably even remember whether you got your favorite cake or not to celebrate. So often it isn't until we've lived years beyond a choice that we even recognize a threshold for what it was. Let me share one of my thresholds with you. During one 6-month period during my 25th year, I became engaged to a man from Winnipeg. And for those of you who don't know, I was living in the States at the time, but I'd always wanted to come to Canada. That's one way to do it. I made my application to move to Canada. I moved into a new apartment that would be our home when we were married. I changed my job. I ended my engagement. I got turned down for coming to Canada. I grieved my father's death. And not surprisingly, perhaps, I entered therapy. And I didn't have to think much beyond those years or wait too long to realize that this was a pretty big one, a pretty big turning point in my life that contributed to how I have become the woman that I am today. And of course, like most of you, I've had more than one threshold that I've crossed during my lifetime. They can be small or large, explosive or quiet, experienced with others or a private realignment, so to speak, but all thresholds lead us to make choices that ultimately impact our lives. And I believe that all of us at some point or another have sat quietly and said, what if? What if I had married that person from Winnipeg? What if they had said, come on to Canada when I was younger? And just like we as individuals have threshold moments, that also happens in communities and countries and groups and congregations. And of course, this congregation has literally crossed a new threshold in the last month or so, entering a new sanctuary and church home in a new neighborhood and incorporating a new minister in the coming months. So it would be logical to see this time as one of opportunity for growth and change, exploring possibilities not available at any other time or any other location or any other point in your history. When we are at that place, to the extent that we can, either individually or collectively, if we can open ourselves to the possibilities of the new or the innovative, to take the courage in hand to choose the road less traveled, then we create space for growth and for options for creativity and for surprise. And not that those don't show up on the more well-trodden path. I think they do. It's just the nature of them is a bit different. One of the challenges in times of transition can be loosening our tight grip on the past to the way we've always done things, how we've organized things and people in our lives, how we've thought about ourselves and our institutions. It's been hard to give up our attachments and some of our expectations, which were framed in terms of how things were in the past, to the stories we tell ourselves about who we are or what we think we have become. We live our lives and we remember our days in the stories that we create and tell ourselves and others over the years. You may be able to think in your own life about the stories that you sort of have put together in your mind that explain something about you or recap a part of your life, and you've told that story several times. Several people have heard that story, often sort of the same kind of way, but it changes a little bit each time. But that story's in there, of blessings perhaps, or miracles that came your way, of obstacles that you successfully overcame, of the ways in which that you've been hurt or victimized again and again, and maybe about your mistakes and regrets and problems and challenges. I certainly have my set of defining stories that I've held on to for a long time. And, you know, when I go back now and I go through some of those stories, I ask myself a question sometimes. And that question is this really true? Or did I make this stuff up? Or did I just make it a little different so I could be a little more comfortable with it? Maybe I didn't really look that great in this story, and I really don't want to tell people that. So I kind of make it a little nicer. But it is also important to remember, and it can be freeing to remember, that what we tell ourselves, especially about our past experiences, it's a story. It is only a story because, blessedly, what was happening then is not happening now. I want you to think for a moment, because I have. Imagine if I had opted to cling to the story of my 25th year, my losses and my hurts and my regrets and my pain. If I just held on to that, let's see, can I subtract that fast? Well, it's a long time. Trust me, 20, 50, 45 years. I didn't major in math, you shouldn't all know that. If I had worked to hone that story like a fine work of art that I wanted to share with everyone, and I wanted them to know how tough that year was. If I clung to that definition of myself, I would have closed myself off from the wonderful future opportunities before me. I would have missed the call to new friendships and new places, new work, and new love. Mark Chernoff writes a blog with his wife Angel called Hack Life. And today I'm going to be quoting some things from his wisdom because they spoke to me about this issue of choosing and moving forward. And Mark wrote, "You can have a heartbreaking story from the past without letting it dominate your present." What happened to me when I was 25, what happened to you when you were 25, is over. It's just a story. And you don't have to let your past inhibit you from living fully in this moment, to keep you a victim of old hurts. We can live through and learn from our stories. We can forgive ourselves and find compassion for ourselves and others. And from that, we can enjoy a peace and freedom that result from not victimizing ourselves anymore. These are lessons for us as individuals, and that can also be lessons for us as a part of a church congregation or any group we're involved in. Every group, and certainly every church, has its ups and downs. It has its proud moments and its uncomfortable secrets. And each of these remembered can evoke strong emotions like shame or regret, or it's a happy memory and it makes everyone feel just so successful and so accomplished to have that come back. But those emotions, especially the tough ones, don't have to determine the options or choices we allow ourselves in the now. Sometimes perhaps that feels a bit impossible, eh? But it's not really. When you realize that there's fundamentally nothing from the past that you need to cling to, because it is not where you find yourself now. It is not what is happening to you now. There may be memories that you choose to hold on to, I get that. We've all had happy times and favorite experiences, fond friendships. There's things that we succeeded at or accomplished, and they feel good to bring back and remind ourselves, in that moment, I ruled the world. We did. On the other hand, perhaps we cling to our hurts as a way of protecting ourselves, to keep feeding our suffering, or because we have never learned any strategies to move beyond the past. Some more words from Mark Chernoff. But the past is no longer here. Things around us are changing and fluid and impermanent. Your stories of the past are just that. They're stories. If there is something difficult that you are desperately trying to hold on to, that includes your anger or shame, pain or regret, how is that affecting you in the present? How is that affecting you in your ability to see the opportunities that are right around you? How is that blinding you? How is that directing you? How is that ruling in your life? In that case, I think that you're probably missing out on a sense of freedom and peace that is waiting for you to make the decision to invite that into your life in service to a happier, more peaceful existence. I'd say it's time to let go and create the opportunity for greater freedom and gratitude and forgiveness to enter your life. When we choose to hold on to past stories with anger or resentment and pain, it's a way of centering moments when we felt like victims, when we were in our victimhood. This kind of self-centered thinking only fuels our misery. We lose sight of the fact that everyone has their stories of their lives, experience, reactions, and reality. So how can we move out of these challenging thinking patterns that keep us stuck? Chernoff says that practicing compassion for others, embracing our past and learning to breathe through our emotional reactions, and expressing gratitude are three of the most effective strategies. So compassion for ourselves and for others. It can be such a freeing experience to relinquish thinking of ourselves as the center of the world's suffering. Because then we can see and acknowledge the breadth of human experience around us, and we can be reminded that other people suffer. There are others who have been forgotten or disappointed, wronged, or hurt. And then we are reminded of our basic humanity, that we too are like everyone else. We are fundamentally at one with others, that we all have needs and wants and dreams and hopes. And all of us have joy, and all of us have challenge. Reconnecting with our own humanity and the humanity of our fellow creatures will connect us again to our compassion for ourselves and for others. It's freeing to say, I did the best I could at the time. And those beautiful words, I believe they they're coming to me right now. I believe they are by Maya Angelou, who said, "We do the best we can, and when we know better, we do better." Same thing for us when we're trying to find our own self-compassion. Embracing our past and breathing through our emotional reactions. Whatever has happened, whatever our story about our past experiences, it's never too late to discern ways that we can find compassion for ourselves. When emotions come up, we can quit running away from them and focus on breathing our way through, experiencing, and then releasing them. Sometimes it's good to get help with that from someone who loves you deeply, cares about you, and can stand at times in that kind of objective place and say, let's breathe through this together. When we breathe in grief, we can breathe out peace. When we breathe in anger, we can breathe out forgiveness. If we breathe in regret, we can breathe out gratitude. Sometimes I think when we hear some of these solutions that really do work, but we hear them and we go, well, that doesn't seem very practical. It doesn't seem hardly like enough to breathe. I would ask you to just pay attention to where you're breathing from. These are breaths that go deep down into your belly, into your soul, into the core of you. Not those little that keep us alive, but not very refreshed. Expressing gratitude. No matter how dark the moment, there's always something for which we can be grateful. When we shift our focus from past hurts to current blessings, we can be thankful in the moment for the good parts of life we are experiencing right now. And even though we have challenges, even though we have parts of our life that are not perfect, well, there's still good things that are happening. There's still beauty. There's still the sun. There's still our friends. There's still hope. Life is good, and it feels good to appreciate and remember that fact, even when everything else around us feels like it might be in chaos. We all face thresholds in our lives. We face them personally, and we face them as in association with others, in a congregation, in other groups, where, like Frost, we find ourselves at a place of choice. And those moments of choice are filled with possibility. Whether for yourself or your community, I hope that you choose the option that you dream of, that you believe will, that you are strong enough to take, that will support you in creating the world that you want to live in, the love you want to embrace and share, and the peace of a life lived with gratitude and grace and generosity. Here are some other words that I think are quite beautiful. They're from Howard Thurman. So as thresholds appear, listen to what he says and prays for. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers, keep before me the moments of my high resolve, that in fair weather, in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. Many blessings to you on these next steps in the journey, in this place, in this time, in the now, and preparing for the future. Amen.